Joining us now, Bethany Kosmicki, the Temple University Graduate Students Association. Bethany, welcome. You're in the PhD program for sociology, is my understanding, and you guys were on strike for what was it? Was it 6 weeks?
Yeah, it was 42 days. So yeah, just over 6 weeks.
Okay, give us a sense of like who went on strike. It was all graduate students. What? Why? Why were you guys on strike?
So we're the Graduate Labor Union. So we represent graduate teaching assistants and research assistants at Temple University. We went on strike because we had been negotiating with the university for over a year. Movement at the table was extremely slow. The university, wasn't proposing very much, or they were hardly kind of budging on any of our proposals. And we got to a point where, it was either accept a very poor contract that didn't meet our needs, or, kind of escalate things. And our folks were, prepared to do that. So we went on strike.
How long, how old was that contract? And was it signed? Like how old is the union? And did the union negotiate that contract? And how long ago was that existing contract negotiated?
Sure. So TUGSA was formed in 1997. We had our first contract in 2002. We bargain every 4 years. So this contract was actually expired a year. So it was a little over 4 years old. We'll bargain again in another, 2.5, 3 years already.
So you guys did pretty well in terms of, you were not getting paid very well, with all due respect, and they weren't giving you, to begin with. But on some level, like you guys were, you held together well over the course of 42 days.
Yeah. I will say, we had what's called like a minority strike, right? So we had a minority amount of our people who we represent who ended up actually being on strike. So that's kind of another remarkable piece of our success here. The university retaliated against us, made a number of different threats and intimidation. But despite that, we have an incredible group of people who were really, really committed to what we were out there for. And we found ways to mitigate those threats and the risks and to really get through a lot of those retaliatory actions. And we, ended up with a really great contract at the end of it.
It really is. A raise from an average of $19,500 in pay to $24,000 for this academic year, retroactive to January 1st. $1,000 raises for each of the next 3 academic years, which take you through at least most of this contract. A one-time $500 bonus for all union members, 25% coverage of dependent health care, which had been totally uncovered. 75%, 100% is better, but for 25%. Increased parental leave from 5 to 21 calendar days. There were other things too. And how many, like when you say a minority of the strike of the union struck, what percentage? And what do you perceive was like the magic number? Do you need 5% or do you need 45%?
That's a tough question. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. And I'll say, we had people joining the strike up until the very last day of it. So I don't know the exact number. I know that we had a majority of members of our union, but of course, not every person who can be in the union is an actual member of the union, right? All the people that we represent in our bargaining unit. I don't know that there is a magic number. I think it really depends on sort of how you leverage your power, what kinds of, allies you have. I know that we've really had some incredible support from our parent unions, from political allies, both local and, national, or in the state of Pennsylvania.
Students? Other students? Undergrad and...
Yes, undergraduates, absolutely. Very, very vocal about things. I think, it also didn't help that, and I'm sure a lot of people saw this, that, Temple really had to deal with a lot of very bad press around this as well, which put in, an immense amount of pressure on their administration to really make things right.
And it's interesting that you had people joining the strike as it went further. So it started to project to to management. This is getting stronger, not weaker over time.
Yes. Yeah, the strike grew the entire 6 weeks that we were out there, from the very beginning to where we ended up. We weren't having people leave the strike. We were only having people continue to join.
As a matter of strategy, right? I imagine like you're, and particularly my guess is as a sociology PhD, that this is something that you have a greater familiarity with than just your experience here. But does it occur to you when you start to see these things, like, have you guys sat down and done like a debrief? Because I wonder if, if there are people listening and they're contemplating going on strike in their schools, like if the idea of like, let's put 10% of our would-be strikers on reserve and have them join the strike as it goes on, to project that notion of it's getting stronger, not weaker, as time goes on, which of course is like, that sends a message to management, like, this is not going the right way for us.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really consider that strategy, although that's like interesting to think about. I think part of the thing is, when you're on strike, it could end at any moment, right? And that's really what you ideally want to happen. You want negotiations to be continuing as you're on strike. You want the pressure of that strike to lead the administration who you're negotiating with to give you a good contract. People don't want to be out on strike. It really is a last resort that you have to do when you're put in that position. And so, I think like saving kind of a reserve of strikers, while it might send a really strong message. And again, I think maybe this depends on the kinds of administration you're striking against, or the kinds of employers you're striking against, or, the number of people you go on strike to begin with. But I think really going out strong is important, even right from the get-go, because that sends that really clear message. And that's ultimately what I think gets you where you need to be. I think a good example of this also is, a lot of times unions will take strike authorization votes, and often that vote is enough to lead the employer or the administration, whoever it is that you're doing this against, to sort of say, okay, even with this threat, we're going to go ahead and negotiate a better contract, offer more than they were willing to, just with the threat of that.
Well, can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what about your guys' status as graduate students made this so unique in terms of your strategy? Like, what were the specific circumstances that you were kind of able to use in terms of your negotiations that ended up giving you this victory?
Yeah, sure. I think academic strikes are a little bit different from some other industries because the kinds of work that we produce doesn't necessarily amass at the end of a day. If we worked in a factory, there would be a certain number of things that weren't produced at the end of the day. In academia, that's a little bit more of it's a slower buildup for that, right? Missing one class may not be a big deal, but a student missing one week or 2 weeks, research not getting done for multiple weeks in a row, that's where it kind of starts to have the impact. So for us, we were prepared going into our strike, knowing that 1 or 2 days may not have the kind of impact that we needed it to have. That like a few weeks would actually end up building towards. So that was something that we kind of planned ahead of time. I think also a lot of it had to do with the cohesiveness of messaging and solidarity on campus. We didn't go into the strike, kind of unprepared for it, right? That's a really difficult decision to make, and you want to be prepared going into a decision like that. You don't want to make that decision hasty. And so we had been building, relationships with other campus unions, with undergraduates, with other local unions, organizations, political leaders, who kind of had a sense of what was going on with our negotiations, so that when we ended up now in the situation of a strike, that support and that backing was already kind of built into place.
That's interesting. So you're building that groundwork so that you've basically created more stakeholders in some way.
Yeah.
What about the non-union members? I mean, you said it's a minority strike insofar as that you didn't have the majority of similarly situated workers. Since coming back and getting all these folks, an approximately 25% raise, just retroactively, never mind like going forward, have more people come and decided like, I'm going to join the union now? Like, I see the value of this.
Yeah, so we have had a handful of people already join the union, and I think it's in that exact response, seeing, wow, okay, the union was actually able to do something very material for me, and I want to be part of that. I think, this is always a question of organizing everywhere is, why aren't people more engaged with the union? And it's different reasons. They may not see the effects of the union as being something related to them. I think in the case of what we just won here, it's really easy to point to, okay, look at the pay increase you're getting, look at the additional benefits you're getting. This actually does involve you, and you should buy into that kind of and become more involved. If for us, we represent about a third of our bargaining unit are international grads. So some of the hesitation of union involvement may come from fear of, intimidation or retaliation, which is connected to a different kind of citizenship status,
right.
which creates, so it's really about identifying why are people not getting involved, and then trying to work with knowing that, with that knowledge, to get them involved, to work past whatever that fear, that problem, or that hesitation is.